Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Developing Dads podcast. The last episode, I think it was the last episode, Neil, I said that we were on episode number 60 or something like that. We're not, in fact. We're actually on episode number 59. Not quite as high up as I thought we potentially were, but even though we're still hitting close to that 60 episodes total, which I find pretty impressive, the fact that we've managed to get to that 60 number. We've done 3,300 downloads, which feels pretty good, but we're not doing it for that, Neil, are we? We're doing it because we just like to do it. It's an art form. It's not a tool.
Exactly. It's time for us to catch up, chat, reminisce.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And in actual fact, I was I caught up with an old friend of mine. He used to be a client, but now he's a friend, right? That's kind of how it often ends up to some extent. And in effect, we were kind of going on. He was like, "You haven't seen him for a year or two," and he was like, "What's this podcast you've been doing? And what's the whole backstory on this?" So I gave him the whole backstory of me propositioning you and suggesting that we should do something like this, and going over it and then discussing it, and just kind of going through it. And I was just milling it over my head, and it just every time I explain it to someone, no one's ever said it was a bad idea.
Yeah,
it didn't cost us much money.
It's funny you bring that up because Isla, for the first time, so I was just putting her to bed, and for the first time, she was kind of started asking about the podcast. She was like, "Oh, are you going to bed now?" She always asked that, and I was like, "No, I'm recording a podcast." Blah blah, and she was like, "Does the podcast go onto YouTube?" I was like, "Wow." She was like, "Yeah, we put it on YouTube," and she was like, "Do you put it anywhere else?" And I was like, "This is from a almost 8-year-old." And I was like, "Yeah, I put it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. What's Apple Podcasts?" And I explained it to her and that kind of thing. And then she was like, "Why do you do it?" And I was like, "Oh, that's getting quite deep." So I explained to her that we, whether this is right or wrong, I don't know. But I explained to her that I'm doing it because if I ever, if I'm not here for you at least you've got something to look back on. At least you've got something to remember me by. And she was like, and her mind went very kind of meta and was like, "You're going to die first, aren't you, Dad?" I was like,
"Wow,
perhaps. What do you mean by that?" And she was like, "Well, you're bigger than Mummy, so you're going to die first." And I was like,
This is some deep stuff for a 8-year-old.
This happened 10 minutes ago. Her head was kind of spinning, and then I opened up the YouTube app on my phone and was showing her some podcasts, and she was like, "Where was that recorded?" And she picked out the one we were walking about, and then she picked out the one in Ali Abdal's office, your old place of work, and also the Tower Bridge one. So yeah, it was a weird 10 minutes before bed conversation.
That's fun. That's cool. I'm interested. I don't think I tend to default to the dead thing. It's definitely part of it. It's definitely part of the legacy aspect. And it's not just for Isla, it's for her kids and whatever else, and what our grandkids are and what they are, our great grandkids, and just that whole thing, I guess, about the fact that I couldn't hear and see what Laura's great grandparents sounded like and what their views were and where they came from, and this is going to live in some sort of internet ether for the rest of time. So whoever wants to, in 100 years' time, find out what the heck we're up to at this in this day and age, then on Tuesday the 31st of January, they can listen to what our thoughts and views were of the world 2023. But I guess another thing that I'd be interested if she asks again that you could maybe touch upon, which I feel like is kind of like a good example. Well, I'm hoping it's being a good example. That connection is so difficult at our age, in our circumstance, in the sense that we're in different countries. We live quite far apart. We have busy lives. We fundamentally have busy lives, which are kids and work and careers and wives and responsibilities and all those kind of things. And it's difficult to. It's unappealing to me to go for a pint with you every single week, because that's just not really a healthy. It's not a very healthy lifestyle, is it? Just drinking all the time. Or albeit Neil's had 5 pints before he's done this one, and I'm currently tucking into a beer. But aside from that, it's healthy to have a regular connection of some kind. And most people will meander rather than having a purpose. And this podcast gives us that really great connection and purpose to sit down and have a conversation. And albeit not everything that we ever talk about is concluded on the podcast, but it's a matter of purpose to connect. And yeah, I certainly feel closer to you. I certainly feel more connected to you because we've taken this opportunity to have a conversation. So yeah, I'd also like you to add that if you don't mind, because I think that's we're not just not dead yet.
I agree. And interestingly, she had a friend over last week. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? And they were in my home office, and my home office has got my like a monitor and this microphone and a few bits and pieces. And her friend asked what the microphone was, as if I was some kind of singer or something. And Isla just piped up and said, "My dad does a podcast," which I thought was quite interesting. So it's obviously instilled in her now that I do this podcast and I record it with this microphone. And she was like, "What do you talk about?" And I was like, "We just talk about dad stuff." So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but it's also that kind of encouragement that I think it's okay to put yourself out there a little bit. You know,
create stuff.
Just create stuff, right? Just try it out. Don't be afraid to talk about things or go over things and put it out there and try stuff and experiment. And maybe this doesn't ever come to anything, and I'm okay with that. But equally, I've really enjoyed experimenting with this whole thing of getting a microphone, setting it all up, doing these notes and contemplating stuff. And there's too many good things that I think come from the podcast. So anyway, I think that was a long-winded 6.5 minute intro to the podcast. So that's very good. I like the fact that. But anyway, I was talking to my friend today about it. It was great. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Developing Dads podcast. We do try and have a theme on these, so if this is your first one, today we're going to be looking at the idea of feeling useless as a dad, certainly in the first 6 months. It's a pretty strong feeling. I think every dad, maybe not every dad, but I've certainly seen it it popped up recently on Facebook, and I've been thinking about it quite a lot, and I kind of talk people through it when they ask me how it's like becoming a dad. And it popped up, and I was like, "Oh, I'd quite like to talk about that on the podcast, because it's a weird feeling that you can't really practice for, and it's slightly unexpected because you don't see yourself as particularly useless, but you actually, you kind of are.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and work your way through it whilst at the same time as tackling this whole new thing that you've never practiced before. So I'd like to cover that, and it'd be quite fun. But what I am curious about, Neil, is every week we obviously sit down, we have a chat, and we ask each other how we are and how the week's been. But with the first point I want to make, and I want you to clarify with me, why the heck have you attended this podcast 5 deep?
It wasn't planned. I was in the office today, and we were moving offices. Actually, we've got a new office, and a lot nicer, shinier office. And after it, and I couldn't say no. It was just me and the CEO in the office, Craig. He was like, "Do you want to go for a pint?" So default answer is yes to those occasions, because he's a busy guy. You don't get a lot of ear time with him. So yeah, from like 4 o'clock until, I don't know, 6:30, 7, I was sitting in the pub with him, having a few pints.
There you go.
And now I'm here recording a podcast. So.
What an incredible life you're living, Neil. On a Tuesday
I've got some,
as well.
Exactly, yeah. Got into some nice, deep, meaningful conversations, and he's such a fascinating guy. I mean, I don't want to do him disservice, but I think he's like in his late 40s. And what a career he's had, and like he's had a startup, he's exited from that, he's now CEO of a multi-million-pound company. And yeah, he's just a really interesting guy to get to know and to be in that kind of circle with. So yeah, it was great.
Good, excellent. Well,
really good.
What else should we be doing? Because did we take a week off last week? I think we did.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. So yeah, I think last week it was pretty standard affair. Didn't really do an awful lot. Kind of, yeah, not many social gatherings. The weekend was good though. So my two of our friends, my boss, name's Lindsay, she was up in Edinburgh with her partner George, and we decided to meet them for a bit of a walk / pub visit on the Saturday. So that was nice. They got to see a bit of Loch Lomond, and the weather came out for us, which is good. I've got a bit of car drama as well. So
Oh, we
I
love a
can't,
bit of car drama, Neil. We love a bit of car drama over the past few weeks and months. Please enlighten me. I have some stories, by the way, to pass on and advice
can't
to the
wait.
audience. So any of the 3.5 listeners that are listening, you're in for an absolute treat. Okay, carry on, Neil.
So we were driving along towards Loch Lomond, and we heard this massive crack on our windscreen, and lo and behold, a little stone hit our windscreen, but a crack went right through it, and it's bigger than a pound. It's in my eye vision, so the windscreen is replaced. Thankfully, I've got insurance, so the excess, I've got to pay the excess and stuff. But it's just one of those things where, similar to you with your car, and mine's a lot smaller size in terms of yours, but it was just, I was driving along, just minding my own business, and the stone just decided to flick up and hit my windscreen, and now I've got to get it replaced. Well, actually, I think it's been replaced. Rebecca, this is how out of touch I am because of my 5 pints. But Rebecca I'm sure Rebecca was at the car garage today getting it replaced. So I think it's been replaced. But yeah, there's an excess to pay. And
That's outsourcing at its best.
but yeah, that was a frustration. So we're driving along and got hit. And then Sunday,
I'm sorry.
a few friends over.
Sorry to hear that, Neil. Sorry to hear that.
Thanks.
It's a pretty crappy thing. The thing is as well, I think the windscreen in our car got chipped a couple of times, so I don't have to replace that, which is fine because I don't have a car anymore. So, but yeah. Anyway, sorry. Carry on. Sorry to hear about the car.
Oh yeah, I'll finish swiftly. So yeah, on Sunday we just had a few friends round. It was a bit of an open house. Like friends came and went, and shout out to, they definitely don't listen to this podcast, but Cheryl and Graham just had a baby girl, which is really nice to hear. All healthy, all
First
doing
one?
fine, all back home. Third one.
Oh my word. Okay, right. Well, they're not really going to care. I mean, there's no point in sending them a card. There's no, just maybe give them some clothes, but they've probably got loads.
Well, that's the thing. I think we're obviously going to get them something, but I think it's going to be something for them instead of for kids.
Yeah,
because they've got everything.
Here's a Hawksmoor voucher. Go and have
exactly.
cocktails.
Yeah, or dine at home or something. Yeah, we'll do that. So anyway, that was lovely news, and that's me. I'm probably going to start my hangover during this podcast.
Excellent. Well, I've got 2 beers to get through. Got one couple that were left over. You know when they're in the fridge and you're just like, oh, I fancy a cold one. The wife's out. Yeah. She's out seeing some friends. It's just me in the house. Olivia, it's not. I could shout. Olivia's not even here. Right? She's at the grandparents, just in case anyone thinks I'm being an unreasonable father and left her in the shed, which I haven't done. Just for clarify, she is at the grandparents. So Laura's out. So I'm having a beer. It's a Winstable. It's from Faversham, which is not too far away from here. Lovely, really refreshing. Thoroughly enjoying it, Neil. Okay, so yeah, what I've been up to? Well, I had a couple of shoots last week. I did a reeled shoot. I've had a couple of people actually just come here for a shoot, which is quite nice because we've got a lovely house and a kitchen and things to film in, so I can set things up. They come to me, I film it all for them, and yeah, it's great. Easy work for me, to be perfectly honest. But equally, it was quite nice. He's a young guy. He actually has a business editing reels for other people, and he wanted sort of my fancy setup, and we bashed through like 10 or 12 different reels for him to edit for himself for his own content. So we also went through a bunch of other stuff that I think was probably helpful for him because he's new to business and new to bits and pieces. So I quite enjoy that, right? You quite enjoy, passing on to the next generation or whatever that's called, and giving him some ideas and things, which was really fun. And then I had something that I've never actually shot before, but it's good money and it's kind of fun. And it was for an old client of mine who owns a fancy glass glazing installation company. So these big, fancy houses that spend 20 or 30 grand installing a beautiful atrium style glass thing, whatever it is. Anyway, so he wanted me to capture that, come down, have a look at it, and it was a big old house. The house was bought for like 2.5 million. Then some person's, whoever it is, owns it, gutted it back to brick, redone it all. So it must be spending, an ungodly amount of money doing it all up. And it's very beautiful, really absolutely idyllic kind of place, sort of partly North London-y area. So that was kind of a different gig, right? It's a bit of droning and a bit of capturing just blokes in hard hats on a building site, in high-vis jackets and stuff. And he's really pleased. Nice. I sent him a little 1-minute edit of it and he seems very happy with it. So I just need to tidy it up and then fire that over. So a bit different, bit interesting. I suppose we could keep on that trend of work. I got tagged a few weeks ago on a post by a gentleman called Tom Stoltman. Now, for listeners that don't know who that is, he is 2-time world's strongest man and lives in a place called Invergordon in the very north part of Scotland, which is fantastic. 2-time world's strongest man. It's no ill feat. His bigger brother as well, I think, is one Europe's strongest man, Luke Stoltman. And they've got a YouTube channel. So they were looking for a videographer, right? And I got tagged in it. And, you casually send off an email, right? And you just see what happens. Anyway, they got back to me and wanted to have a little chat. So I had a chat with their business manager. I very much doubt, by the way, they listen to this podcast, but screw it. So Ewan jumped on a call. He's from Aberdeen, in fact, and we're talking about Inverurie. He knows where that is, and it was all kind of quite good chat. So he obviously was impressed with some of the work that I sent over, and we had a chat about things and what they could improve about the YouTube channel and X, Y, and Z. And basically they asked me for another call back. So I sat down with Luke Stoltman himself and Ewan again, and we just kind of went through the same kind of process and just had a chat about what they can do, how they can improve stuff, and whatever else. And I think we're moving on to the next stage of a test shoot. So yeah,
nice,
pretty cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I sent you a message yesterday about it. So
yeah, I mean these guys are. If you don't follow Strongest Man, you probably won't know them, but yeah, they're pretty well regarded in their field.
Oh, very very well. Yeah,
Stoltman brothers.
Yeah, they've great success across the sort of the strongman stuff, and Tom obviously winning it twice is just absolutely phenomenal. There's not many men in history that have won it once, let alone twice. So I'm really keen to see how he gets on, and I really believe that if they are keen and they want to work with me and we can work out what it looks like, then I think it'd be great. I think I can get them to the 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I think we can make some amazing content. I think I'll get so much career enjoyment out of doing it because I've followed Strongman since I was, primary school. Every Christmas I'd sit down and watch it.
Yeah, me too.
It's fantastic, and it's just something that I think, I'd really like to do it. So we'll see. It's in the pipeline. I'm excited about it. A bit nervous, but it's nice. So that's that. I haven't done a whole much else. I went to football at the weekend with Fulham. They were playing Sunderland. We drew 1-1. Not great. All right performance. Again, just quite fun. It was me. David had to pull out because he's had a bit of an eye surgery. My father-in-law. So it was me and a mate of mine who came along, took one of the tickets, and I was with Laura's grandparents who are also Fulham fans. So it was nice to sort of catch up with them, say hello, just watch football, enjoy it. So that was fun. Car situation. So this is the story that everyone's obviously been waiting for, right? Car situation.
2.5 listeners.
Yeah, the car situation. So there's to quickly recap the situation that happened. But a couple of weeks ago, woke up on a Monday morning, looked out the window, car's not there. It's gone. Been nicked. See some CCTV camera, car's gone, right? Did the police thing, did the insurance thing. Police have already closed the case after a few days because they're never going to find it. Never going to find it. And going through the whole valuation from the insurance company. Now, for those listeners who don't know, you do not have to accept the first valuation that comes through from an insurance company. Nope, don't have to do it. Okay? So you have to go through this kind of like endurance process to who's going to win, Neil. Okay?
Endurance.
Because you go through all sorts of people.
Run a marathon.
You go from you go down to like an evaluator, to an engineer, to a senior engineer, to a complaints officer, to threatening ombudsmen and all sorts of crap, right? So we're maybe a week, 10 days down the line, and they've just paid me what I wanted. Right?
Nice.
12% more than they were going to pay me initially. So the first offer was £7,000, and I initially wanted 9. But I knew that was never going to happen. Like, I'm not going to find an example of that, right? It's just not going to happen. But they sent we go back and forth with some examples of what car prices are and blah blah blah. And they sent me like 5, and 2 were blue, 1 was red, 2 were black. And those 2 black ones were very similar to the mileage that I had, exactly same spec, same color, everything. And the average came to 7,800. And I was like, look, based on your examples, I'm using those. The average is 7,800. Just meet that. So the senior engineer guy just went backwards and forwards, and he was like, no, final offer, 7.6, that's it, it's not going to happen. Sends me an email, makes it very clear that's all they're going to do, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so lovely lady phones me today, and she sits down, and we just have a chat about it, because it's the complaints procedure now, Neil. I'm in the complaints department. Okay, I've gone from valuation to complaints department, which is what you need to get to get what you want. And I know I know, and I think everyone should know, if you raise a complaint and then you take it to the ombudsman, it costs the company, so the ombudsman is basically like an independent regulatory board that if you have a complaint about the service that you've been provided, they will assess that claim for you. Now, the problem is, for the insurance company or any company that has to go through this ombudsman complaint process, it's a costly affair because they have to have all these documents and get all this paper trail and then have conversations with the ombudsman. It'll cost them way more than basically the 200 quid extra that I was like, hey, I want this amount. So I knew as soon as I got to that complaints department, and I just said to the lady, I said, look, 7,600 without prejudice, I'll accept that. So that basically means that I can still go to the ombudsman and say that I don't think that's a fair price, so we can go through the complaints process. And I said, look, the offer on the table is, all I want is £7,800. I feel that's a valid and final value. I will end the complaint right now. There's no need to go any further. That's all I want. And she just went, yep, that's fair. I can take you to that. I was like, great. So why are we going through this? Like, why have we gone? I've gone through like 6 people to try and get this amount. But at the end of the day, I think the moral of the story, Neil, is for anyone who goes through this process, you do not have to accept the first valuation from your insurer. You will get at least 10% over and above that in some form. And don't accept at any point until you get to the very last point of complaint, then accept an amount that they're going to offer you, because that will be the most that you're going to get. So I'm kind of chuffed myself, because I won, obviously. Or the insurance company won, whatever it'll be.
What's the next steps with your car? Shopping this weekend?
Yeah, we're off tomorrow. We've earmarked a car. So I think the money will be dropped in this week or something. But either way, we've got some cash in the bank to go and shopping. We're going to go and get it's a boring life now, Neil. I'm going to be driving an MPV or SUV or whatever it's called, and it's got a nice big boot and it's practical and it's.
Is it a Focus you're going for, or a bit bigger?
No, we're looking at a Hyundai Tucson.
Wow,
you seen those?
No.
Yeah. Oh, it's just boring, really boring. But it's practical, right? And it'll last us 4 or 5 years, lowish mileage, reasonable color, and yeah, it's just going to be fine. And I think, again, but the problem is, I kind of like it and I kind of don't, but now we've got to go to the garage. You got to sit down, tell the guy that you're not accepting the price. He goes and gets his manager. His manager comes in and he tells you that it's this, and it's that. And then you go backwards and forwards and then you accept a price, right? So I've got to go and do that tomorrow potentially. And yeah, that's kind of it, to be honest. That's the process. Just get a car, find the car, get ready for it, buy it, take it home, put it up my new driveway. That's kind of it. Yeah, that's a car situation probably sorted after that. And then the house is now pretty much, like, structurally pretty much done now. Our chipped windows got replaced today. Our house has been painted, so it's looking very brand spanking new. I'll send you some pictures. It looks amazing. The driveway's done. Just need to get the drop curb, which is already paid for. We're just waiting for the council to spend 10 weeks waiting and deliberating on when they're going to do that. Yeah.
Nice.
That's pretty much it. There's a couple of little snagging issues, some new tiles to put on because they broke them, and a couple other little bits that need to just do. But that's pretty much it, which feels pretty good considering the amount of time and money that's been sunk into it. It's we won't have any tradesmen for a while, which is going to be nice.
And you're going to have a new car to enjoy in the driveway.
And we're going to have a nice new car to enjoy in the driveway, yeah. The good old wagon. Because I think that car in particular is good because it's big enough, it's not a ridiculous amount of money, and it's going to last us until the electric era kicks in, right? Say 4 or 5 years, I think electric cars are probably going to be basically the thing that you buy or consider. So we'll sort of run that one to the ground, and then the next car will be whatever electric. And I think in that time the technology is going to be better, the batteries will be better, the charging network will be much better, the acceleration, the whole thing will just be much better. So because buying one now just doesn't, I'm not sure it makes sense. Especially if you're using it semi-regularly.
They're very expensive as well.
Silly money. I mean, yeah, I couldn't afford an electric car because I also, the thing is for me, and I don't know how you feel about cars, but if you're in a position in which you don't have to get yourself into a car payment, because let's be honest, like I could go out and buy a nice fancy car off a forecourt that's relatively new, that's tens of thousands of pounds, and just have this kind of monthly payment thing on. but then you lack a flexibility of like being able to just sell the car, get rid of it, and not have that monthly payment. Or if you've got the cash, you might as well just buy the car, even though it's a depreciating asset. But if it means then you buy probably a cheaper car, and then you don't get this kind of like adaptation thing where you're used to these fancy cars and all that kind of fancy gadgets, and you just have a car and it works and it does the thing it needs to do, and it's not cost you an arm and a leg, and it's perfectly fine. And at the end of it, you own it. You don't have a balloon payment or any of these types of things, or interest to pay or whatever else. So yeah, we're going to just buy
I
it
agree
outright.
I think, I mean, we could have went all out and got a fancy car, but we just got a practical car that sits five people, 3 kids in the back, fine, and all our camping gear or our stuff we want to take to Skye. It's not the most glamorous, but it does the job.
It is very easy to want to go fancy, isn't it? Very
Especially
easy.
when you see, like, put a small deposit down, £500 a month. I could be driving around in a Range Rover. Like, if I was that stupid. But
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all the costs that come out, the 450 quid a year in tax, and the massive wheels that are 500 quid each. And
Yeah. And the
you
balloon
chip that
payment.
windscreen, Neil.
People just seem to forget the balloon payment at the end of these kind of contract deals. Sometimes it's like 15 grand. That just to own the car, you've got to pay 15 grand or give it back.
But it's offset, isn't it? Because you just put you in the next deal.
Yeah.
And it just keeps
You're
going.
stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, it just keeps going. And, I get a cheaper car. At the end of it, say 4 or 5 years' time, it'll probably drop in value by 3-4 grand. But then I've still got, enough left in the tank to use that for buying the next car or whatever else.
Yeah.
Who knows? Anyway, this is not what the podcast is about. It's not about car purchasing, let's be honest. But my week's been good, Neil. I've enjoyed it. A little bit busy. February's looking a bit quieter, but we'll see how these sort of things pan out and what's what. But yeah, today's podcast, I was keen to hear your thoughts on this. I know you're sort of a few years past the initial stages of dadhood, but I'm sure you've got something to say just as much as I do. And I was kind of sitting down thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit. But we've had girlfriends before we met our wives, right? Or I think you did. Is Rebecca your first ever girlfriend?
No.
Maybe. No. Oh,
Just
okay.
not. That could be another episode.
Could be another episode. Exes. And what we learned. And we'll use like
Don't move to
names.
Orkney.
Fake names. Yeah. So we've had girlfriends before, and semi-serious relationships. And those relationships teach you stuff, right? They let you practice this idea of having a partner and the things that you should and shouldn't do, and things you should help with, and just kind of extracting yourself from the selfish thing that you are to trying to work out how to be a good boyfriend and do nice things and blah 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 blah. It's basically lessons. So you get to the point where I met someone like Laura, and I was at least well trained, at the very least, or well practiced.
Yeah.
And then you get married, and it's kind of you do that, but there's not really a process in which you can get married and then have a kid and then just do that over time with different people and different things. It's not great. It's painful if you want to break it up and do it again. It's not a nice process to go in. You've just kind of got to jump in and just go for it and figure it out. And you're going to be shit at it, and you're not going to be great at it, and you're going to make mistakes, and then it's all just going to go backwards and forwards. And in that process, you're trying to, while you're trying to figure it out for yourself, what is this dad thing? What is all this kind of thing that's happening? You've also got to combat the idea, or I felt I was combating the idea of actually just how useless I am in this entire process. Certainly within the first 6 months. And I'm sure there's many people here who'd be like, oh, but you can make dinners and you can hug and whatever else. But that's all the stuff that you just do anyway, right? That's kind of thing. You're a good partner. You help with that. But it's just the looking after the child. The only things you can really do is maybe change a nappy. The rest of it is kind of generally mum-based, and you can give a little hug and whatever else. But the thing to help the baby keep going is all mum-based. And I don't know about you, but I just felt kind of useless this kind of first 6 months a little bit.
No, I definitely agree with that. So I just, if you're a new listener, I've got a almost 8-year-old and twin boys who are 4.5. And certainly when the first one came, when Isla came, the first like 3 months specifically, I remember all she wanted was mum. All she wanted was to be fed, and Rebecca breastfed, so that obviously adds a bit more complication to the bond that the guy can have. But yeah, there was just a sense of, even at night times when she was crying, she didn't want me, she wanted mum. It was just mum, mum, mum. I'm trying to think of like how I overcame that. And I think you just go into kind of the kind of physical acts you can do, especially for Rebecca. So like making dinner, getting breakfast, taking the kid for a walk, or the child for a walk to get it to sleep in the buggy. Just try and do like practical things, maybe not physical, practical things, because the kind of, the consoling the baby or feeding the baby is a bit more challenging, especially in the first 3 to 6 months.
It is. It's kind of it's something that I didn't actually expect. It kind of hit me a little bit when Olivia was born, that, you know, the things that I can do just are day-to-day stuff that doesn't really like contribute towards the growth of, or a significant growth of the baby. You know, I can hug her and sometimes and whatever else, but like you say, it's very much a mum thing. And even now, to some extent, depending on Olivia's mood, she's very much more mum and nana than she is dad, right? And I know that time that will change. You know, there's definitely I think there's something in development where, like, if it's a girl, they'll compete with the mum for the dad's attention or something like that. Again, I might be wrong, so anyone who's screaming at me in some comments or shouting at me, I reserve the right to change my mind. But I think there's something about that, and then she becomes very much like clingy to dad and that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm interested as well, because Laura breastfed only for 6 months, and I say only, it's still a long time. And you know, she took most of the brunt in terms of obviously having to wake up continuously through the night and feeding her. So you went through 2 different processes. You had you had Isla, and then you had the boys, and I know Rebecca breastfed for the boys for a longer period, certainly over a year. And you know, did you kind of want to push for the bottle? You know, because when the bottle gets introduced, it's much easier for us to be useful, isn't it? We can take the baby, we can do the nighttime feeds if necessary. We can, give take her out, because you can transport her now. You don't have to transport Laura around. Yeah. How did you feel about that? You know, because I felt a real break when the bottle was introduced. So I'm curious about how that.
Yeah. So interestingly, so I think there's two separate feelings on that. So Isla, for example, to start with, for whatever reason, and there's some kind of, I can't remember what the medical term is, but some women, if they're breastfeeding and they try and express, that milk goes off really, really quickly. So even if you freeze it, or if you do something with it, there's something to do with the proteins in the milk that just, it goes stale, and then the babies don't take it. So with Isla, she was breastfed for 9 months, and the milk that Rebecca would try and express would just like go off, and even if we tried it instantly with Isla, she'd just either be sick or not take it at all. And she also had some issues with the bottle. But I remember vividly that Rebecca wanted to go on a hen do, and it was somewhere in Scotland. I can't remember where, but
I've heard of these types of stories. A few of my friends have done this, but yeah, go on.
Me and Rebecca had to go together to this hen do, and I stayed in the hotel room with Isla. In the middle of nowhere. It was like, I can't remember where it was, but in the middle of nowhere. And Isla would never take a bottle, and she just refused to take bottles. But Rebecca had gone out to this hen do, had enjoyed herself, and Isla woke up wanting a feed. So I had some emergency like milk in the bottle to feed her. And she took it, and then within 10 minutes, she projectile vomited. It was just a chaos. So Rebecca kind of got an emergency call saying, look, we've got like a 6-month-old, she needs fed, blah, blah. And like that was another moment of like, I am really hopeless. Like even trying to console her, like she just wanted Rebecca, and yeah, that was tough. And the boys were slightly different. So Rebecca fed for 2 years with the boys, which hats off to her. She kind of got it in her head, and yeah, she did it for 2 years, which is pretty phenomenal. During the 2 years, I felt like I had more of a connection with them than Isla because I needed to. Like with twins, like it wasn't all on the mum. I was there from like night 1 or night 2 helping the boys because Rebecca can't feed both at the same time on her own. She can't lift them in and out of the cots and all that kind of stuff. So I was very, very hands-on compared to Isla because I needed to be. And I think that inherently just created a bond. So I didn't necessarily have that problem. And for some reason, Rebecca's milk was fine in terms of expressing. So I think from like month 3 or month 4 or 5, Rebecca went out for a weekend and I had the boys and I managed to bottle feed them. But was there any pressure for me to not breastfeed? I think the answer is probably no, because I realized how just the kind of the health benefits, the bonding benefits and all that kind of stuff, but also how easy it is, especially with twins. Like imagine trying to prepare 2 bottles of formula milk, the cost of it, just all that stuff.
No.
Imagine at like 3 a.m. trying to do 2 bottles in the microwave. Like that just sounds hell.
Do you think as well? So the first time, like I just explained, the first time, when you have a child, there's no practice, there's no pre-run. Even though you'd had kids, I still hadn't experienced the whole thing that comes along when you bring the kid home first time, and your wife's breastfeeding for the first time, and you've got to support her and find ways to encourage things, and just all the whole milieu of first time things that happen when you have kid number 1. Do you think that kid number 2 coming along, actually, you probably had some level of self-confidence that you could find a path where you were useful, you knew the things that you could do that would contribute towards the whole relationship positively. And then also, like you say, having 2 at once, it was just fundamentally impossible for Rebecca to not have you there. Like it was silly to not have you there helping, because you could do the physical carry thing, you could do the burp thing, you could do all those kind of bits and pieces where if it was just one, she could have probably just taken it on herself. So do you think those 2 factors played a role? So the second time baby plus, you kind of knew that path, and the whole, it's 2 kids, like she needs help.
Yeah, so definitely the second kid, I think, although has its challenges with the kind of the diversity of having 2 and one competing for the other in terms of attention, but you've got experience of how to calm a baby, how to change a baby quickly, and all that kind of stuff that just, it's a lot easier in the moment. And also, and I think especially and this is me talking on behalf of Rebecca or behalf of females, I think the first baby is very traumatic.
Hold on a minute. On behalf of females. Wow. Okay. If you get cancelled after this, then I'm fine, Neil.
The first baby is also obviously very traumatic, and it's all new. They've gone through labour, which is just pretty horrendous, to put it bluntly. Sorry, I thought I heard one of the kids. No, it's not. Anyway, ignore me. Pretty horrendous. So the second baby, she's been through all that. She knows the kind of the hormone changes. She kind of expects it. The emotional kind of roller coaster she kind of expects. The first one, you're just winging it. Like you've no idea how your body's going to react. You've no idea what the emotional turmoil it's going to go through, the sleepless nights. But the second one's easier. And when it comes to twins, I think, you just need to, and it was bloody hard, but it made me closer to the boys. I didn't feel as useless as I was with Isla because there was just a need. Like I would have been so selfish if I said, no, Rebecca, you deal with those 2 babies. I'm going to have a sleep. I need to work in the morning. I think that just wasn't a conversation that I was willing to have. Wasn't worth it.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring up that stage. There's that kind of interesting stage from birth to week. I think it's about week 4, where there's a massive transition for, and I don't profess to understand it necessarily. Like I just have the experience of Laura, where there's just a huge change going on. Externally, but also certainly internally, like lots of hormones are changing, and that really drove emotions for Laura. And I'm sure she won't mind me talking about it. But from like my perspective, from a dad's perspective, I think I just find it quite challenging. And And again, a little bit useless in a sense, because she was feeling all these feelings, very upset at even the smallest thing. It was quite challenging to navigate sort of conversations sometimes about certain things, without it turning into something that it wasn't an argument. It was just a very emotional thing going on. And I think I find that difficult to deal with anyway, because I don't know, just for various reasons. So I found it very difficult, and part of me felt a little bit useless because I couldn't help her calm down more or make it better or whatever else. Although I did try, it was kind of the cuddles and the help, but at the end of the day, I think it's part of the transition process that, it's going to come, it's going to happen, and you don't need to be a trained professional. You just need to watch out for a few signs if anything sort of becomes a bit difficult. But then that's what your care worker or whatever they're called, who comes around and sort of asks those various sort of questions about how you're both getting on and doing, and you're just kind of looking for telltale signs. And I think I leaned on Laura's mum a little bit, just because obviously she's definitely experienced it a few times with having two kids, and we just kind of talked about it, and she was very supportive on that front. But yeah, I guess I felt initially a little bit kind of a bit useless at trying to help, and
yeah, I mean I think, and it depends how you look at it. The guy, obviously, depending on the relationship setup, may need to go to work and earn the money, but especially in the very early days of having your first baby, the first 4 weeks or 6 weeks, the guy has it easy. Like if you compare to what the woman's gone through, whether it's a C-section or even just a standard labour, that's bloody hard. If they had an epidural, there's kind of recovery after that and all that stuff. Like all we've had is maybe a couple of sleepless nights, and we're maybe a bit emotional. But if you think about what the woman's gone through to get this thing out, is mad. And I do wonder if there's some kind of, maybe it's not jealousy, but maybe our wife's jealous of how easy a man has it, especially in the first kind of, 3 to 4 weeks.
I don't know. I've never asked her.
What do you think of that? Yeah, just I do wonder, is there some kind of resentment, be like, you haven't pushed this baby out?
I'm sure there's definitely, I'm sure there's definitely feelings going on there. And like I say, it definitely tests your relationship, because you've both never been through this. Most of you have. Certainly if your wife or your girlfriend or your partner, and you've both never been through this process. If this is the first baby that you've had, it's a very odd. Oh, not very odd. It's a very complicated, challenging time. You're sleep deprived, you have hormones everywhere, you don't know what you're doing, you're trying to do the right thing, but it's not often the right thing, and there's not really that much support. Well, there is a bit of support, but then you're alone, it's your first night, all those kind of things. So I don't know, I guess so. But I think that depends on, I think uselessness from a dad's perspective, if we take it back to that thing that we're talking about, I think, and in that situation of, the thing that we can go to work and, they're at home and they've just got to look after the baby, I think then having that family network. I think Rebecca said it before when she said that, and she's quoting someone else, I think, but it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. So I think if you want to combat some level of that uselessness, parents and close people who have had children really help you feel and comfort you in the fact that they've been through it, they understand it. It's not forever, and it's just going to be time that it'll take you to feel confident about the process, to feel about everything. And I guess if they're there also, then it means there's not like a resentment that potentially could build if you're off at work and you're having to do your thing and you're not having to look after a baby, or having to get up every night because you don't have mammalian glands and you're not feeding the child. So but they can support, right? They can take your role from the helpfulness thing where you're cleaning up and doing food and that kind of thing. I think I'm making sense. Am I making sense? I think I am.
No, I think you are. I think when I went back to work, so I think I took 2 weeks off for both the twins and Isla. And when I went back to work, I definitely felt more useful. And that's a very kind of practical, external usefulness. But I don't know. I felt like I was earning my keep or earning our keep, and like just yeah, I had to kind of give it my all in terms of my career because I still wanted to progress. I still wanted to show my boss that I was still okay and still could progress in that career path. But yeah, certainly after the kind of 3 to 4 weeks going back to work, that level of usefulness went up. And
Yeah, going to work's kind of an interesting point. It's something that I hadn't actually I had thought of, but it kind of became one of my defaults. I don't know if it was kind of yours, where you're like, right, if I can't do anything, one thing I can do is make sure that the mortgage is paid, the lights are on, the heating's on, the cooker turns on, the washing machine turns on. I can make sure I go to work and hold that shit down, right? So
yeah, I mean, I've no idea what episode it is, but we spoke about losing our jobs, and I went into quite a lot of detail about my first job loss, and Isla was only 6 months, 7 months old at the time. And that was hard because I had to make a decision of like, in order to keep our roof over our head, earning a certain amount of money, I had to move away, which was like 3-4 hours from where we lived, to work. And yeah, that was tough. And then there's definitely periods of time where I was, I don't know, sitting in the beds that I rented or the room I rented from some random, in terms of like, I know Rebecca's having a hell of a time with her Isla. She's either got a sickness bug or she's up all night. And I'm just sitting here like reading a book or in the pub with my friends. And there's a massive, although it might have seemed like I enjoyed it, there's a massive amount of guilt, a massive amount of uselessness when I was down there earning the money to bring back up home. And yeah, that went on for like 12 months of just kind of, there was a period of time where I worked at home fine and then lost my job and then moved away. And that uselessness kind of came back in terms of, but I had no choice. Like I just had to do it.
Yeah, because there's usefulness in the case that you can go to work and you earn money and you do those kind of things and you're physical and you can carry stuff and move things around and whatnot. But then there's the uselessness of I can't replace you. You know, I can't take your place from what happens within this team. You know, I can't fit, but she can replace you. Like she can go off, she can go to work and she can lift things and whatever else, right? I think there's that element of uselessness that comes to that, but it's just literally you. I think I understood and empathized with Laura having to wake up in the middle of the night and feed the baby, or feed Olivia, sorry. But I because I couldn't replace, I can't help, I can't do anything, I can't do that. It's impossible, and I've often taken the default of just being able to do anything, right? You can Google it and work out what to do and how to do it, but at the end of the day, it was all down to Laura, and that's quite a difficult thing to deal with, I guess, because you can't take the burden, right? You can't carry it, which is, I guess, quite a masculine trait, isn't it? That you'll carry the burden and be the strong one, and you know, you don't always have to be, but yeah.
Yeah, chin up and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's changing. You can now, especially in the UK, or if not definitely Scotland, you can split your maternity leave. So if both parents are working in a relatively stable job, then I could take 6 months off, Rebecca could take 6 months off, and that kind of shares the load. I don't know anybody in my kind of social circle that's done that, in terms of the wife going back to work after 3 months and the guy carries on being on holiday, but I wonder if that would make us feel more useful. And would I do it? Not sure. I'd like to think I'd give it a try in terms of having shared maternity leave, but I wonder if we shared maternity leave more and it was maybe more of a.
I do think that would solve a hell of a lot of problems. I think having shared, if not equal, paternity leave would contribute positively towards society, positively in society. I think that men would feel less of a requirement to go to work. I think they'd feel more confident with handling the baby, such at a young age, helping feed the baby, understanding the baby, having more time with the baby, having more time with their wife, because you know, during this whole process of feeling useless, I now reflect back on it, and even now with Olivia going through the whole separation anxiety aspect of things, like it doesn't last forever, right? It's not forever. But the realization is that you are useful. You know, you're very useful, in fact. because
Yeah.
even from the simplest thing of cuddles and kisses, and comforting words, and saying you're proud and you're how incredible they are and what they're doing and supporting and all that kind of stuff. That's useful shit. Because they like, I can't imagine how difficult it is for single mums.
Oh, yeah.
When they've just had a baby, there's no family around them. It's just themselves. They have to deal with it. That's a task that I definitely couldn't do. I couldn't even imagine doing it. So I think if dads are quite new and they're in that situation where they don't feel like there's nothing they can do, or they're not very practical, and it's quite challenging. I just feel like there is, and there are often things that don't seem very much, but they're actually huge.
Yeah, making dinner, giving cuddles, cleaning the house, just practical things. I think but I'm very, I would say, jealous. So my brother-in-law, he lives in Copenhagen just now, and he's expecting his first child in the matter of weeks. He gets, it's either 3 months or 6 months off full pay, as does the wife.
Oh,
The
yeah.
wife gets 12 months off. But in Denmark, he's getting 6 months off. And that's just mad. Like, I got 2 weeks statutory, so I got like 100 quid a week, even with twins. It's just like, what's the point? Like,
Yeah.
it just does nothing. So,
But they also
David,
get free childcare from birth.
yeah,
You know.
they're very well set up in these kind of Danish countries.
However, though, Neil, would you like to pay 50% tax?
If I was a young professional like David, I'd be happy with 50% tax. He's getting 6
Are
months
you
off.
sure? Yeah, but that's across the board.
Interesting that, I mean,
50%.
This is another conversation, but he's getting paid more. His take home is more than what he was getting paid over here.
Yeah, but the cost of living in Copenhagen in particular is higher than London.
Yeah, I know,
Like it's a kind of, it's a double-edged sword. This is we're talking politics now, but it's kind of like it's a difficult situation. But I definitely still think that men and women should be able to share like some sort of 12-month maternity leave across the board. I think that should absolutely be a choice. There should be none of this absolute nonsense, which is 2 weeks paternity leave. That is a joke. In this 2023. Yeah, 2020. Well, statutory pay, like it is what it is. Like we're not going to live in a society where we get paid a lot from the government for doing stuff, right? COVID is an absolute anomaly, and even on benefits and all that kind of thing, it's just not going to be great. But the fact that it's still only 2 weeks for a man is outrageous. Is absolutely outrageous. There's no reason why. There's no reason why we shouldn't get just exactly the same as women, where we get 9 months paternity leave pay that's exactly the same as women. It's not very much, and I agree, and it wouldn't necessarily sustain our lifestyle, but we should get equal amounts. Sorry, I won't keep going. It's ridiculous. But
that whole
I think
thing
it
where
is.
like women vs men, and like there's always a bias towards women. But is there really? If you look at things like paternity leave,
You mean a bias towards men?
yeah, bias towards men. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. In this situation, yeah. Like in this situation, I think it just solves so many problems, where if I know that there's at least some money coming in, I can take a bit more time off. That ultimately means my usefulness grade goes up somewhat because I can help more, right? I don't feel pressure. I don't feel guilty. I get more time with my loved ones, which is ultimately the thing that we want. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but I just have to say that if you're a dad going through the first 6 months and you're feeling useless, even to be fair, even the first 18 months, like Olivia, although she does love me, and when we hang out together, just the two of us, it's incredible, and she loves playing, and we'll do all these kind of things. But I tell you, she just goes nuts when Laura tries to go to the toilet, and it's just me and her, and she knows her in the house. So you'll continue to feel useless probably for some time until they grow out of a bit, and then it's probably just going to be all dad for a little while. Because I do remember when Laura had a friend come over, so she's got a daughter as well, so there's obviously four girls in the house, and it was just me, and I came downstairs, and Olivia was very protective. She came running over to me as soon as I came downstairs. She was like, "Dada, Dada." So she's clearly like, "Hey, Dad's here. He's my dad. Hey everyone, look at this." And she was being very fun with me and playing with me and stuff. As soon as everyone left, nah, Not having it. Didn't want to see me.
I mean,
but you're not
on
useless.
that note, I was just going to say Isla and the boys are obsessed with me. And Rebecca would agree. It gets a bit on her nerves. I'm definitely the favourite, which is quite nice. I love it. Sometimes it can get a bit like claustrophobic, overwhelming when they're all at me. But yeah, deep down, I absolutely love it. Like Isla still loves me putting her to bed every night. She still asks for me to take her to school. It's priceless.
It's nice. It's lovely.
So it comes back. It's only like a season or yeah.
Yeah, it's not long. So I just have to stress that, if there are any dads out there that felt like me, or even felt like Neil, in some level of uselessness, that it's not forever. It won't last forever, and you'll definitely find ways to be useful. And often they're in areas in which you kind of didn't expect it, or are not they're not obvious to you, like cuddles, kisses, flowers, support, words of encouragement, all that kind of thing. Yeah, it's good. So. You'll be all right.
Hang in there.
Hang in there. Yeah. Just get through it. Yeah, you'll be all right. Anyway, what advice from the developing dads in January 2023? But yeah, this is the last day of January in 2023, funnily enough.
Madness. 31st of January.
Bonkers. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Developing Dads podcast. I hope you don't feel useless anymore as a dad. I think it's you're very much a useful part to play in your kids growing up and your wife's recovery and ongoing support for motherhood. But yes, if you enjoyed this, we are on YouTube's as always. You can see our pretty faces. Neil's actually got his 5 beer eyes on. So if you'd like to enjoy that, then by all means join us on YouTube. It's Developing Dads. We are on Instagram. Neil is not upholding his New Year's resolution by uploading reels on a regular basis. If you want to put pressure on him, feel free to follow us on Instagram, Developing Dads, and you can add some comments to the latest one. I don't know, what should we hashtag it, Neil? Hashtag Neil's failing, I think is probably going to be quite a funny one if anyone wants to add that. God knows how many people are at the end of this podcast. Yeah. Right? Is that the closing remarks, Neil? Have I got it right?
That'll do. Yeah, I'm just looking at my kind of selfie image and yeah, definitely feel like I've had 5 pints.
Excellent. You're going to have a groggy morning, aren't you?
Lovely.
Have you sorted out the Sky stuff yet?
That's an offline chat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the next one. Right.
Bye.
Cheers, Neil.